In this session, we have an example of two-dimensional array, and the example says we have to write a Java program to read integer numbers and save them in two-dimensional array. The size of the array should be entered by the user, and then the program should find if the array is row magic or not. An array is a row magic if all rows they have the same sum, and we need to format the program as the following example. So, for example, we have to ask the user first for how many rows and how many columns by saying enter number of rows and columns. And if the input is a 3 and a 3, it means our array should be of size 3 rows by 3 columns. And then we have to ask the user to enter the elements of row 0, row 1 and row 2 because we have 3 rows. If the user said 4 rows, it means I have to ask for row 0, 1, 2 and a 3. So always we have to stick with how many rows and how many columns entered by the user. And then we have to say if it is a row magic or not by calculating the sum of the element. Let's assume, so if the user says the number of rows and columns are 3 and 3, then this array will be created. We have 3 rows and we have 3 columns. And then according to the user input, the data will be saved in our rows. So in the first row we will have 1, 10 and 10. The second one 21 and then zeros. And in the last row we have 20, 0 and 1. Then this row will be a row magic, and the reason is that the summation of all rows they have the same value. So if you check the summation of the first row, 1 plus 10 plus 10, it will be 21. The summation of the second row also 21. The summation of the last row also 21. So each row will have a summation of 21, and that's why we call it as a row magic. Let's assume we have the other example. It says you have to enter number of rows and columns, and again the user mentioned the 3 by 3, and then we have the following input from the user. So we will have the following array, 3 rows and 3 columns, and the data input by the user as follow. Now this array is not row magic, and the reason is the summation of the first row is a 3, and the summation of the second row is also 3, but the summation of the last row is 2, which means not all the rows are having the same sum, and that's why this is not a row magic. The idea behind this statement, the idea behind this program is we have to make sure that all the rows we have, they have the same summation. So what we need to do, we need to calculate the summation of the first row, and then we have to compare it with other rows. So our first step is, let's go to row 0, this is our first row, do the summation and save it in a variable. For example, we will call it sum row 0. And according to this data, if I have 1, 10 and 10, the summation of the first row will be as 21. And then we will have a loop going from location 1 up to the end of the rows you have. So here I will start I from 1. And then again we will do the summation, but I will not use the summation row 0, which is the previous variable. I have to create a new sum. So for example, we will call it as current sum. And here I have to do the summation of the numbers 21, 0 and 0. So this will be as 21. Now we need to do a comparison. 21 and 21, is it okay? Are they the same? Yes, which means I have to go and check the second row. Now I will be moving and I will have the value 2. And then again I have to go and do the calculation of the current sum. Initially it should start from 0. And then do the calculation of the numbers you have, and you will end up with 21. And again I have to compare, is it equal to the first row? Yes. So it means now all of the rows we have, they are having equal values. So yes, this is a row magic array. In the second example, we will do the same trick. We will consider only the first row at the beginning. We will do the calculation of the summation. So we will have the initial value, we have it as 3. And then we will have a loop starting from location 1 up to the end of the array, up to the end of the rows, and we will have to calculate the summation of each row. So we will have here again current sum equal initially 0, and then it should have the summation of these values, so it should be as a 3. Once we do the summation, again I have to compare, is it equal to the first row? This is true. So we will go to the second row. With the second row also we will have to start with current summation equals 0, do the summation of your element, and you will end up with 2. Now when you compare 2 and 3, this is not equal, so you will exit the loop and you will mention that actually this is not a row magic. So the idea is, first of all, I have to ask the user how many rows and how many columns we need. The second step is create the array of size row and column entered by the user. And then we have to ask the user for the data. So we have to read the data of the columns and rows we have. Once we are done with the data, the first step is go and calculate the summation of your first row. Always remember the first row is located at row 0, and then you will have to go for each column in your array. If all of the rows they have the same summation as the first row, then you have to mention a message, this is a row magic. If they are not having the same sum, we will mention this is not a row magic. As usual, we start with the scanner, so we define a scanner. And then we will ask the user for how many rows and how many columns, and that's why we need the following. We need to define two variables, row and column. So we have this is integer row, integer column. We will ask the user enter number of rows and columns, and then we have to read from keyboard two integer numbers, and we will save them in row and column variables. So let's assume we have these two variables, row and column, and the value is 3 for each of them. Now the second step we have to do the reading. The second step is we have to do the declaration of the array. So that's why I have to say integer two brackets, the name of my array, a new integer between brackets, row and column. So we will use the variables here. So if row is a 3, it means I will create my array of size 3 rows. And if column is also 3, the number of columns will be 3 as well. So this will be our array. We have 3 rows and we have 3 columns. Now the second step we have to do is go and fill your array with data. As we did in a previous session, reading the data always will have to use nested loop for each row and for each column. So here we have to say for integer I equals 0, I less than row I plus plus. In the previous sessions, the way we used to do arrays, we say I is less than the name of my array, so here we call it array dot length. And because in this exercise, we're already creating a variable row which will hold the number of rows, so it's okay, we can just use the variable row. Both of them, they are equal. And similarly here we can use column or we can use array at index 0, at index I, location, dot length. And this is just like in terms of programming. So you may use the variable row and column, or you may just use length just like in previous sessions. And then for each row I will ask the user please enter the elements for the current row. So I will say please enter the elements for row 0, for row 1, for row 2, and then for each j, the columns, just read the value from the user and save it in location I and j. So we will keep reading the values, and let's assume the data was entered by the user as follows. Now, just having the two-dimensional array with the data, now our second step is go and find the summation of the first row. To calculate the summation of the first row, we need to create a variable, and let's call it sum at row 0. So this is my variable, sum at location 0, and the initial value will be as 0. And this is, we have here sum 0 and the initial value as 0. To calculate the summation of the first row, we know that always the first row is having index location 0, but the columns will be moving. So for example, in our example here, the summation should be the element at location 0 and column 0, and then again, and this is a plus my array at row 0 and column 1, and then a plus the array at row 0 and column 2. So always here we'll have the same row, which is 0. It's only the column will be moving, so that's why I need j. And here we don't, in this case, we don't need a loop for I, because I'm not moving with rows. Only I need a loop for column. So here we have j from 0 less than column plus a plus. And all what we have to say is summation at row 0 plus equal array location 0 location I. So we will have it as follow. So starting with row 0 equal summation at row 0 equals 0, and then j will start from 0, so j is starting from location 0. The execution of the statement is get me the value of row 0 and column 1. So row 0 and column 1, the value we have it as 1. We have to add it to the current summation, so this will be as 1. And then we will move with the loop. J will be moving, so j will be at the second column. Similarly, you need to retrieve the value of the row 0 and column 1. Sorry, the first one was 0 and 0. The second one will be as 0 and 1. The element at 0 and 1 is 10. So take 10 and save it and add it to the summation. 1 plus 10, so it should be as 11. Again, we have to move with the j, so j will be moving there. And now we will have the values as 0 and 2. So we have row 0 and column 2, and the value is 10. Added to the summation, so the value you will have it as 21. So what we did, we just went through all the elements of the first array, and we just did the summation of these elements. And at the end, the summation we have as 21. Now, when we go now and we need to double check the values of the summation of the other rows, it means now I have to go from row 1 till the end of the array, and I have to go for all the columns. So that's why we need now nested loop, just like we always do with two-dimensional array. So that's why I need a loop for each row, and I need a loop for each column. For each row, I will start from 1, just like we agreed, because already the summation of row 0 is calculated. So I will start from location 1. But columns will always start from 0, because I need it from the first column till the end. To do the summation, always we have to start with fresh sum with 0, and then we will do the summation. So let's do it step by step. So currently I equal 1, so I is at location 1. So I'm talking currently only about this row. Current row equals 0. So the current sum of the row we are talking about as 0. Now for each column, so I have to execute these two statements. For each column, go and do the following. Take the element at location I and j and add it to the current row. So we will move like this. J is located at location 0. The element 21, I have to add it to the summation. So here we should have 21. And then j will be moving. Add 0, 0 to the current summation. Again, it will end up like 21. Move with j, take the value 0 and add it to the current summation. So again, it will be as 21. And then you will end up with your j. So we are done with the j loop. Now what we need to do, just before we go to the second row, we have to check, do we have the same summation as the first row or not? And that's why we have this statement, and we will mention, go and check sum at row 0, which we have it as a 21. If it is not like the same as the current row, which is a 21, if they are not the same, there is no need to continue with other rows. We just need to break. But in our case, they are not the same. So it means I have to go to the second row and check the summation again. So again, we will repeat the process, but we will go for another row and we will need to check, are they having the same value or not? So here we will go there and we will go for second I, which means now we will start with I equal 2. So I'm talking about this row. And also we will mention that current row equals 0. So again, remember, always the summation should start from 0 because we need to initialize it. So it will not build up on previous values. For each column, go and calculate the summation of your values. So I will say, go and take the first value 20 and add it to the summation. So this will be 20. Take the second value 0 plus 20, again it will be 20. 1 plus 20, it will be as 21. So for each I, for each j, take the value and add it to the summation. Once you are done with the summation, now your step is to compare. Is it the same value as the summation of the first row? If it is the same, just continue. If it is not, you need to break. So I will do the comparison. I have here 21 and the other variable is also 21. They are the same. So again, I will continue over there. We will reach the end of our row because this was last row. And here we will end up going there. So now we will just come to this statement, and we have to mention now, actually, because all of the rows, they have the same value, so we have to mention this is actually a magic row. If they are not having the same value, we have to mention it's not a row magic. Now we have to know that once we have this kind of a statement, we need something like Boolean to find out whether we finish this is the loop there as a result of finding all of the elements with the same sum, or we may have found that is not like the same sum. And that's why we need to include Boolean, and we will start with true, and then if it is not within the condition we have, we change the switch, we change the value, and then we double check at the end. So we will have to include the following. So here we will start by saying, just before you do all the summation of all of the rows, just introduce a variable, call it magic, and the initial value is true. So that's why we have this as an extra variable, magic equals true. And then you will go just like as usual, and you will do the execution of your statements. So we will say, go for each row, do the calculation of the summation. If it is not, if the summation is different, then a break, otherwise you have to continue. So if we apply it on the same data we have currently, so the first row we have the summation as a 21, and then when I was at row 1, we also did the summation and it was a 21, so this was okay. So we did not execute the if statement, which is not equal. We go back and the value of I is the second row, and we did the summation as well, and the value was 21. So again, when it comes to this condition, which is if it is not the current row, you have to break, which we didn't do it. So I will go back and I will finish I, which means we will finish the loop that we have there, and we will come over this statement and we will mention if the value of magic is still true, it didn't change because I went through all the rows and my initial value of magic is still true. We didn't change it to false. We never came to this statement and we change it. And that's why it is still the original value. It is still having true. So that's why I will output a message and I will say my array is row magic. Let's repeat it again. Let's change the value of having the summation not equal. So we have a practice of having not row magic. So let me just remove these, and we will start with another array. And let's assume only a small change. Let's assume here we have the value here as of the first row, we have 3 10s instead of 1 10 and 10. So starting with the first thing, I have first to calculate the summation of my first row. So I will go to my first row and do the calculation. It should be 10, 10, 10. So we should have the value as 30. And then I will have a variable Boolean magic equal true. So I will have this magic and the initial value as true. And then we will start with row I equal 1. So this is I at the first value, which is 1. You have your current summation as 0. So this is the current summation as 0. Now go and check the summation of the current row. So go for each column from the beginning till the end. Take the value and save it and add it to the summation. So we will go and take these values, 21 zeros, and add it to the summation, and we will end up with 21. Now once we are done with the current summation, I have to go and check, do we have the same summation or not? We will have it as follow. The summation at row 0 is 30, but the summation at the current row is 21. They are not having the same value, which means we have to stop and we have to mention this is not a row magic. So what we will do, we will say, go and change the value of magic to false. So we will just change this value to false, which means we found a row which not having the same summation as the first one, and then we will do a break. A break, it means just finish your loop and just go outside your loop. Remember, these are the boundaries of my loop. So when we say break, it means I'll just get out of these brackets. Now, once you exit your loop, you have to check, did you exit as a result of checking all the rows, or did you exit as a result of having one row with summation that is not equal to the first row? And this is, we find it by going and doing a double check with the magic attribute, with the magic variable. So here we have a statement, magic, is it equal to true? Our magic is not true, our magic is actually false. So we will come to the else and we will output a message, our array is not a row magic. So the idea of this exercise is summarized as follows. First of all, you have to read how many rows and how many columns. So we need to create 2 variables. The second thing is create your array as how many rows and how many columns entered by the user. And then you have to read the values. And then to find if it is row magic or not, you have to do the calculation of the first row. Remember, the first row is located at row 0. So we need only one loop to go through the columns. The second thing, I need to do the calculation of each row individually, which means I need a nested loop from row number 1 till the end, and we need another loop for columns. I have to check, once I have the summation of current row, if it is having the same as the previous one, then it's okay. If it is not, we have to break, and then we have to double check the value of our Boolean. If it is still the initial value true, it means we have a row magic. If it is not, it means this is not a row magic.